Hey, Barry Goss here, co-founder and publisher of M4 Research. You may or may not know that we have a sister site at risky.tv. And basically what we do is we categorize videos around these core topics that affect everybody's life. Pretty much you cannot get away from the areas and the wisdom and the things being said in and around money, lifestyle, business, tech, mind. These are broken out into subtopics that just kind of narrowize or nicheize the information. So, there's a few things that have come at me today that I want to just talk about improv style, just off the cuff, not really have a scripted out pitch of anything. This is just some wisdom that I've learned over the years collectively through a multitude of well, let's just go to this document and I'll show you what I'm referring to here. I'm not going to say multitude of gurus, because what I've learned over the years is that anybody and everybody in our path and the path that we are on interpersonally is going to be our guru. No matter what level they're at economically, no matter what level they're at connectively, socially, wisdom-wise, intellect, everybody is our guru. But the key is to know how to listen to ensure that everybody is. However, the corollary to that, what I've found, I've seen something repeat over and over and over the years when it comes to coaches. Now, I'm going to expand on what coaches is in a second. Typically what happens is when somebody identifies themselves as having a strength or an area in life that they're good at, they end up egoizing or attaching that identity to one philosophy or precept and continue preaching that. And if somebody or anybody around them doesn't attach to that wisdom as they do, then that person is not evolved as them. And what happens is that ends up narrowizing who they are. And I want to show you something real quick. If you come over here to risky.tv, there's an excellent overview of this that Noah Kagan brings out of Aubrey Marcus. So come up here to the search bar and type in warrior. Oops, sorry, I just missed a key here. Well, it came up anyway, but we're going to do warrior poet. Type in warrior poet up here. It'll come up. This is the video you want to look at. I'm going to play it with you, but not all of it. It's only a 3-minute video anyway. So the warrior poet, here we go.
I think the person who's just a fighter but says, oh yeah, fuck all that spiritual bullshit, I don't need to be that, I'm tough. Or the person's like, you don't ever need to fight, just see abundance in everything. And I think both sides are bullshit.
You're very, I guess people label it as new age, and we want to label things to help us understand. But you're spiritual and you're new age, but you're also like a fucking warrior. And you do UFC. I wouldn't be surprised if you said you've killed someone. Right? If you're like, hey, I stabbed someone in the neck because he was fucking with me. And I'm like, yeah, I can see Aubrey doing that. So I haven't.
Never killed anybody.
I guess where's that balance, right? Because I think on one hand I hear new age frou-frou people and I'm like, ugh, shut the fuck up. But you kind of balance that really interestingly with this kind of machismo, like, I'm also, self-assured and tough and a fighter, which almost seems opposite to this, kind of hippy-dippy lifestyle that I've seen of people who are like, get in your mind and let's meditate together.
Yeah, it is. And I think both sides are bullshit. I think the person who's just a fighter but says, oh yeah, fuck all that spiritual bullshit, I don't need to be that, I'm tough, Or the person's like, you don't ever need to fight, just see abundance in everything. Both sides are nonsense, right? And I think we used to have an understanding of that. There used to be the idea of the warrior poet. And this was a kind of a concept that I latched onto a long time ago. This idea that Socrates was the greatest thinker of all time, but you read reports of him in battle, and he was one of the most ferocious warriors. Miyamoto Musashi, the greatest swordsman who ever lived, was also in his spare time, painting calligraphy and writing and meditating in his garden. And this idea of being a full, robust human experiencing both sides, I think that's our birthright. And I think all too often we get stuck in one side or the other. We see it in politics. You're liberal or conservative. Fucking neither. Like, why don't you choose a little bit of both? Why don't you just figure out what makes sense instead of just putting yourself in a single archetype, identifying with that archetype, and just accepting, the basic structure that comes along with that label?
Okay, right there. Let me stop that. Right there. Accept the basic label that comes along with what makes sense is really ultimately what I want to show you in action here. So This is a great example of somebody that I adore greatly, by the way. This person, which obviously needs to go unnamed, it's irrelevant. But when it comes to identifying a single core philosophy or archetype, there can be people who do an amazing thing well. So look at the quote here. I know a gentleman who does an amazing job of helping people unwrap the stories that they attach to experiences that they have labeled as bad, traumatic, or negative. The story, as he says, creates the perception. The labels and the attachment and the story is a complete illusion. How can you grow if you have a story everything has to fit into? Well, you can't. Now, this isn't there's so many deep dives just into this core philosophy or angle or wisdom. Yet, I have seen time and time again where a person like this can narrowize or basically latch on to this own story of this story, which is ironic in some ways. But this is, I think, how life works, is that if we're not keen on the law of polarity, we may not realize just how deep we've actually put ourselves in one rabbit hole, instead of looking around going, wow, we're in this rabbit hole. There's actually a few exits here that we can actually go into and explore and be more broad with. So one of the things this person says is that when I was talking to him about, I just need to share something with you on a grounded level in order to get some perspective on how to have compromise with somebody and how to let this person know that I want to move away from the past story and be into a present place of win-win agreements, then, I have experienced what you're seeing on screen, the hippy-dippy stuff that you just heard Noah Kagan talk about. I plant seeds. I have no care if they are accepted or heard, Barry, nor if I am, I'm not the one having the experiences. You are, and I'm only trying to point you inward where the truth always is. If you decide not to accept or apply that thought, it has no consequence either way to me, only to you, and in the end, every path leads to within. Okay, so I know that's 100% Buddhist philosophy, and if we're all going to go into a cave and not have to deal with people, that might be the path. That might be the only extreme path, as talked about here on the video here, the Warrior Poet video. But as I talk about here, so my response is basically, in an era that requires interactivity with others, which includes interpersonal understanding, even conflict resolution, sometimes, go figure, right? One way to prevent that, of course, is to just go sit in a cave and go within. But it's not practical when there's processes to maintain, people to appease in real life. So just keep that in mind, dear guru. This is who I'm responding to. In writing, keep in mind, even though we're on the phone all the time, and we have been. I adore the teachings you have, especially the notion of dropping the replay of a story around past experiences that no longer serve. That all makes sense. It's something for sure that those heads riddled in PTSD or emotional trauma need to hear. It's a target market for this person, I say. But at the same time, the law of polarity is basically saying, okay, holding on to what something is asking of you and trying to figure out how to make it work in a win-win way is something that requires head-level, practical, grounded thought. Now, what I want to point you out to, or point to you, I want to point your way is on this post, the Warrior Poet post on risky.tv. There's a link down here. Intuiting your way to failure. Now, this goes to that does not go to that article. It goes to this article right here. So you can click it and you'll see an amazing post about whole brain approach to spirituality. The preface here is pretty much the same thing that I'm wanting to point out to you, which is be careful about just on what extreme side of any spectrum you get on. In many ways, as he talks about, if something feels good, then it is good. If it feels bad, it probably feels bad for a reason. But that's an extreme way of looking at things. It takes away context, and most importantly, it takes away head-level thought about what needs to be done, regardless of, because there's things that feel good that aren't the right thing to do. And that in itself, if it feels good, then it must be good, is one precept. It's one notion in law of attraction, as well as just overall general metaphysics in some ways that people follow. Follow your bliss. And that's all people latch onto. You got to be careful when you're going through life and growing that you contextualize what you hear. And if it's working for you one moment, it doesn't mean it's going to work for you in another. Follow your bliss might be the way to go sitting in a cave. Now, why am I pointing this out when we have a site that's all about researching money, wealth building, lifestyle? Because inside, and that's not where I wanted to go, I keep wanting to find that right there. Okay, so I'm on the inside of M4 Insider. We have a section called Mind for a Reason. And if you remember watching this, you already know why, but if not, we have a whole entire series here, High Yield Wealth from the Inside Out. I talk about this on the introduction of this, about how it took us about 3 to 4 years to decide to even bring this type of stuff in. On a site that's all about the where to, how to, resources, contacts around investments and cash flow opportunities and how to employ them, and screencast about where to go to sign up for this and sign up for that as it relates to growing money. It might seem kind of odd to put a mind section between money and etc. Even though most people will come up here and, they want to know whatever they're most challenged with around money, they're going to basically be guided to where they want to go. They want to learn how to make it, manage it, multiply it. We've got a lot of resources that are off the beaten path on how to do just these 3 things. Mind, though, is a key component. And it's why over the years we've brought in some very deep, high quality, valuable content and education and resources and contacts as well around the mind. I just wanted to point out some of the things that I put on Risky.tv under the mind here and curated under some of these subcategories. I think this Warrior Poet one is was a good reminder for me today to point out balance and to point out to quit labeling yourself, to quit identifying yourself with who you are as a coach or a sage, saint, guru, you name it. Coach, broad term for the people that feel that they maybe just need to teach more than they need to learn, but you really can't teach unless you're learning simultaneously. All right. That is my mild soapbox for today's video, and I wanted to keep it less than 10 minutes, and I've already overachieved. So over and out.